mics are on, right?
The mics are working, right? Yep. Hello. Hi, everybody. I find it terrible since you are completely on time and we are keeping you waiting. Best presentation of the whole conference coming up shortly. I think I was asked to give it a few more minutes, and I'm going to wait for Laura to give me the sign to actually start. But maybe I can get, before I introduce the panel and all of that, can I get a show of hands so that I get to know you guys better? If you had to define yourself as a gender person or a climate person. Gender person? Climate person? It's not bad, it's almost 50-50. Very excellent, good. And that was exactly the intention, that we wanted to make sure that we bring both communities together. So the gender people learn a little bit more about climate, and the climate people learn a little bit more about gender, and then the idea is for you to stay in touch forever and ever. So this is the idea. Laura, are we ready to go, or should we still wait for a little bit? You're ready. Okay, this is the heads, the thumbs up. Good, let me start. So I'm Carmen Niethammer, I'm with the European Investment Bank, and I'm sure you know everything about the European Investment Bank already. I will be moderating this particular session, and it's going to be difficult for me not to want to talk. As you can tell, I'm a huge extrovert, and as the European Investment Bank, we are also the EU's climate bank. We have a lot of our gender initiatives are actually also having climate impacts, so 60% of our gender portfolio also has climate and environmental and sustainability objectives that are being met. And so we think that we are in the place of conducting this conversation, but the panel is the best. So I already have one because the organizers have been able to give me the best ever panelists, and I'm going to introduce you to the panelists now. And I'm going to start in alphabetical order with Ophélie Bouquet. She's joining us today online. She is a policy officer at the European Commission, DG INPA, this is International Partnerships, and they have launched a report that Ophélie will tell us more about, but it's all about women's resilience, economic and financial resilience, and it only was launched like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. Ophélie, say hello. This also makes sure that I can wave your hand so I can make sure that you're actually hearing
hello,
us.
everyone.
Amazing. So you're one of the few people who are actually going to hear about this, among the first people to hear about the report. And this is something where we also supported DG INPA from the EIB side. So this is Ophélie. Sonia, you're going to have to wait because I'm doing it in alphabetical order. Then we have Carl Deering here from CARE, and he is the fantastic addition to our panel because he's actually involved in development and humanitarian work. So he has a lot of hands-on experience from the ground, the whole informality sector. This is something that you have a lot of knowledge of, and you're also in some amazing networks that actually are about climate and gender, and so another fantastic expert because I learned a lot, so I know for sure. And then we have Sonia Kelly, who is the global head of the Women's World Banking Institute, joining us today. Last time I spoke to you, you were not in New York City. Where are you today, Sonia? Does the mic work?
Yes, I think the mic works. Today I'm in Seattle, actually.
In Seattle, still in
but
Seattle.
I live in
Okay,
Denver,
last time I
in the
spoke to you in
US,
Seattle,
and I'm in New
still in
York about
Seattle
once a
today.
month. Yeah.
Amazing, and we hear you well, and you are familiar with Women's World Banking. They have also just done an update, November 4th, on their women and climate finance work. So again, you are a privileged audience to hear some updated statistics there. And then, this is for you to practice, we have our fourth panelist. She knows what's coming. The name is fantastic. Somia, and now comes the last name, Suraya Narayanan. Go ahead. Everybody? Narayanan. Yes, good.
Yes.
And Soumya is this Avishkar Capital, joining us all the way from India today, and again has huge experience on climate and gender, ESG, lots of actual accolades that we could mention when it comes to your background and your expertise. So very, very thrilled. Why are we talking about climate and gender? I think to begin with, we all know that financing women is actually a good business proposition, right? So a lot of financial institutions, I don't think I need to completely get into this whole topic again, but a lot of financial institutions are actually making money. The women's market is profitable if you do it the right way. Women are better at paying back. They are loyal customers of financial institutions. They have higher referral scores. Cross-selling is amazing. And so women are good customers when we bank them. So most financial institutions can still do more in order to reach women customers. And then they're also incredibly good when it comes to investing in businesses that are climate informed, sustainable, and when we bring both of them together, we should, in theory, have a silver bullet. And so our conversation is all about how do we not only finance women better, but also, in particular, how do we actually strengthen women's resilience livelihoods. And we are going to focus our conversation all on solutions, or not exclusively, but mostly, because I don't think we need to hear how terrible the world is, because it is already, we already know that. But I wanted to share with you some of the not so great statistics. We do this very, very quickly, so that we just understand why this is urgent, because as we said, we have the climate and the gender people in the room, so we learn from each other. So here are some statistics that I wanted to highlight, and you may just want to look at the statistics at the slide for a minute, choose your 2 or 3 favorite ones, and then I'm going to ask you maybe to add something to it if you have a fantastic statistic that we don't know, but I'm going to go first to our panel. So here are some gender and climate nexus statistics. This is the gloom and doom slide. These are the statistics that should keep you concerned. And I'm going to turn it to Sonia, because a lot of these statistics are actually from the report that Women's World Banking had just updated. Sonia, can I turn it to you, and maybe you can bring these statistics to life?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Carmen, for bringing us together today. Thanks so much to the European Microfinance Platform as well. And I want to acknowledge as well something that you didn't mention, Carmen, which is COP30. It's so timely that we're having this conversation today because of COP30 happening as well. There's just so much, and I hope that as all of you listening and actively participating today in this room, engage in conversations beyond this room, that this will be a really helpful session. I'm Sonia Kelly. I work at Women's World Banking, as Carmen said, as the global head of the Women's World Banking Institute. We've been working on financial solutions for 45 years, but only in the last 5 years have turned to climate. And indeed, just as Carmen said, climate realities are not doom and gloom. They are a business opportunity. I don't think Women's World Banking would be focusing there if there weren't a business opportunity. But it is important to start with the numbers. And some of those numbers do reveal to us a market, kind of a market share, a total number of the addressable market. So I'll run through some figures, and then I'll kind of turn to the opportunity piece. 589 million women in climate vulnerable countries don't have an active bank account or e-wallet. If you've been following the release of the Global Findex, you know that there are only 700 million women in the world who don't have an account. So that means 4 out of 5 women who don't have an account live in a climate vulnerable country. It's a really significant market share.
Maybe I can ask the team to put the slide back up, because as you're rattling through the numbers, people will probably want to read them at the same time, and then we bring you back on screen. Is it possible for the production team? Yep, perfect. So this is the 4 out of 5, right, that you just mentioned now?
4 out of 5 women without access to financial services live in a climate vulnerable geography. And that's just to say that this conversation, bringing together the climate people and the gender people, is tremendously important. We also know that after a disaster, there is an opportunity to provide people with instant or slightly delayed, but like very quick relief. And so this figure, about 812 million women not having a way to receive a payment in an emergency, that's a figure that shows climate vulnerability. These are the women who don't have a payment instrument, who aren't actually able to receive a payment. There's an emergency. They would need a government to pull up a truck into a square and hand out cash, which really isn't possible in many cases. That's to say there's vulnerability. That's also to say there's tremendous inefficiency in the system. And inefficiency is a market opportunity. We also know there's a 20 percentage point gap in climate-related microinsurance. It's a gender gap, 20 percentage point gender gap in climate-related microinsurance. This is really interesting to me because if we pitch insurance to women and we pitch insurance to men, women are actually more likely to buy it because they're more risk aware than men, and they're more likely to be the first ones to go without food if there is a climate emergency. And so women are the ones who are much more likely to actually purchase insurance. This 20 percentage point gender gap in climate-related microinsurance just doesn't make economic sense to me. So I'll leave it at that, just like the top line numbers. But Carmen, I really hope in our conversation we can get into that market opportunity piece, because women are not just passive victims of climate change. They're not powerless. Women are the ones who are actively adapting, mitigating, and innovating to navigate these changes. They're the ones that are kind of leading that in their families. And so looking forward to getting into the solutions conversation. But for
Very
now, I'll turn it
quickly,
back
yeah,
to
we're
you.
going to stay with the gloom and doom for just another minute or so. Somia, anything that you want to react to when it comes to the statistics on the screen?
I think for me, the most striking statistic is on, more than 4 out of 5 women, do not have access to financial accounts or bank accounts, right? If you see microfinance, it's the largest it has the largest number of women borrowers. 99% of the borrowers are women, yet bank accounts, very less. And if you look at, 85% of the informal workforce in India are women, again, without, bank accounts. I mean, how do you then, create other forms of, safety nets in terms of savings or insurance when you don't have the basics, right? So that for me is quite striking.
No, I completely agree. Carl, anything for you to reflect on, add?
Thank you, Carmen. Yes, please. The one that struck me was the statistic on women's leadership. And Sonia mentioned the COP right this week, where delegates and negotiators are trying to agree a gender action plan as part of the Paris Agreement. Last year's COP saw negotiating teams, 34% of negotiating teams were women, and 27% of ministerial decision makers were women. So there's a massive gender gap in leadership in the climate change arena, and that's correlated with some of the statistics we heard earlier about adaptation finance and where it's going and who's making decisions around how adaptation finance is spent. There's a direct correlation.
And I'm so glad that you're mentioning we actually launched at EIB a Women Climate Leaders Network with climate leaders who happen to be women from the European Union member states, and they are adding a lot of value to us. Excellent point. Before turning it to Ophélie for your reaction, I want to warn the audience, if you have a statistic that you want to share with us, raise your hand. Ophélie, over to you. Anything that you wanted to react to?
Yes, maybe not on the specific. Oh, I can see myself try. Okay, maybe not on the specific figures that were shown here, but Sonia was mentioning the Global Findex 2025 that was just released a couple of weeks ago. And when I went back to it, they added questions in the survey on climate shocks and climate change because they've seen the increased frequency as a direct impact in connectivity, supply chain, and financial stability. And the data showed that 25% of adults in low and middle income economies are affected by natural disasters, and mostly the poor and adults living in the rural area. But what was missing was gender disaggregated data. We didn't have any data related to women and men. And to me, that was a bit striking and critical, because it means we have not yet, we need to do more work into recognizing and prioritizing intersection between climate vulnerability and gender inequality. And so I'm very glad to have this panel today actually to talk about it.
Yeah, it's an
Way more
excellent
than we
point.
need.
So we don't often have the right data, not enough sex disaggregated data, and when we see it, we always find that women are more negatively impacted. Anybody here in the room that is from an organization that has done some amazing research that I need to know about, that we all need to know about? Next year, this is going to change. Next year, you're all going to be like, I did a new report. Okay, good. So that's... Go ahead, Sonia.
I actually have those figures. I'm so glad that Ophélie brought that up. Indeed, the Findex does have figures on climate vulnerability. They have figures on, they ask, have you experienced a climate disaster or natural disaster in the past 3 years? And then they ask, have you experienced damage to your home or your livestock due to that? And they do gender disaggregate that data. So we know that 1 in 4 women in low-income, climate vulnerable countries report that their household income loss or inability to work has happened due to natural disasters in the past 3 years, and 1 in 5 have experienced damage to her home or livestock due to natural disasters. So I'm so glad Ophélie brought that up, because I think that's an important additional data point. Yeah, thanks.
I told you we have the best panel. This is like absolutely incredible. Thanks very much, Sonia. Moving to the more positive scenario. Now we left the negative ones behind. Can I ask the production team to show us the next slide, please? Which is all in green. I hope you noticed the incredible choice of first red numbers, and now it's going to be green numbers. Do I have to move it myself, maybe? Here we go, the green numbers. And this comes back to Carl, because we actually realized that women's leadership really matters in this whole gender and climate nexus conversation. If you even just look at studies where they're looking at board diversity, which is something that we have done over decades now, just to show the profitability of companies that have more board diversity, etc. Now they realize that actually those companies that happen to have more board diversity than others, that they actually are better when it comes to energy efficiency, water management, ESG reporting, and so it's incredible that actually that the data has been sitting there. Nobody has actually fully zoomed in on it. And when they looked at it for the financial sector, it turned out that this is an ECB study from the European Central Bank, that banks run by women lend less to big polluters, and they just, this is longitudinal research. How women in management make a difference, and how indeed, when it comes to startup companies, that more often than not, women startups are actually much more interested in creating more sustainable businesses than men. And so we have possibly the silver bullet here, indeed, to get us to meet both our gender equality, but also our climate goals going forward, if we zoom into women's leadership and women's entrepreneurship more effectively and faster. Yeah, and maybe with that, because you mentioned it, Ophélie, we don't have a lot of statistics out there, but you have just completed or published and launched this report on women's economic and financial resilience, and I wanted to ask you to get us into the conversation on what do we actually mean when we talk about resilience, women's economic resilience, financial resilience, how do we define it, and where are the potential entry points for us to follow up on in the conversation. Can I turn it to you, Ophélie?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Carmen. So on this, we had a lot of conversations in the beginning of the report in trying to define resilience. Traditionally, resilience is something that is seen as a very short-term thing. It's defined as the individual ability to cope with shocks, to absorb them, and to also anticipate them a bit, and in a short-term aspect. But we know that shocks do not happen in an isolation way. There are always layered disruptions that come, especially for women entrepreneurs that do face structural barriers, limited access to asset ownership, to financial resources, to useful information, Also take the trade-off between caregivers and the business activity. So it's a multitude of aspects that need to be taken into consideration when we think about resilience. And so that's why we actually chose a definition provided by a CARE program. The program is called Strive Women, implemented in 3 countries, and they define it as such. So it's the women's entrepreneurs' ability to recover from shocks in the short term while prioritizing long-term growth in environment that enables and encourages them to do so. And so when we think about this definition, we do see both the short-term and the long-term aspect of resilience. One aspect that we also wanted to focus on is the different type of disruptions. We wanted to have 2 categories. The shocks, those one are immediate, it's sudden, and it has a direct impact on your business activity. You can think of a flood or a fire that's going to damage your equipment. And for shocks, you need immediate actions. Business owners need to react extremely quickly to bounce back from the shock. And then we also see the second category, that is stressors. And stressors, we are defining them as slow burning pressures that build over time. And you can think of the gradual changes of climate change, deforestation, desertification, increase in temperature. And so in those aspects, there is a need to adapt, not just quickly, but in the long term.
No,
And that's why for this report, we chose to have a 3-stage resilience framework. So first, you have anticipation and preparation. This is strategies that are focusing on identifying risks and building buffers. Second, you will have the absorption. This is the moment where the shock happens and you need to bounce back quickly from it. And thirdly, you have the adaptation. And on this is long-term adjustments that are supposed to reduce further vulnerabilities. And so within this framework, I don't know if we have maybe the slide on that, but to give you the different stages. And with that, you will have different tools to mobilize, both financial and non-financial tools. And I also want you said something today in the beginning, very true. Women are resilient. They are risk aware and way more than their male counterpart. And something that we've seen while doing this report is that because women are resilient by necessity, the question is whether financial systems are resilient to them. So there is a focus that we need to have on that as well.
I love that setup. Thank you so very much, because what we haven't had until, I guess now, we haven't had to reach full agreement on what actually women's resilience means and why should we focus on it, and what are then the frameworks that we can actually develop and introduce products that are better fit for women's needs at the women's market. And I really very much like the distinction that you had for different types of climate impact moments, so to speak. Sonia, you wanted to talk about why this really matters on the positive side. So let's go back a little bit on the business case, and then start moving us also into the way that women's world banking looks at some of the products.
Thanks, Carmen. Yeah, well, the good news is all of these women who cannot receive a digital payment, who don't have savings in a formal financial institution, who don't have an account, it's not that they're not financially active. And I think everybody in this room, you wouldn't be here if you didn't recognize that low-income people have a great deal of financial activity. So when we talk about women who don't have formal savings, we know that it's not that they're not saving, they're just not saving in formal financial institutions, which makes their capital vulnerable. And so that really is the bottom line of the micro market opportunity. We also know that specifically women, they are really active in working to build their own resilience and the resilience of their families. So this isn't like a conversation where we in this room are talking about conferring resilience or conferring empowerment. Women are not powerless. They are very powerful. They're making a lot of decisions. They are farmers adopting drought-resistant crops. They are fisherwomen who are reshaping their businesses in response to rising temperatures. They're entrepreneurs who are embracing clean energy and sustainable practices and making money doing so as well. Like there are women that we talk to at Women's World Banking who have set up solar panels and are selling solar electricity to their neighbors, contributing to climate mitigation as well.
So
We also
all of
know that
what you
women
just
are
said,
caregivers and community leaders. They organize recovery efforts. They help strengthen social bonds after disasters, and they're much more likely to heed early warning, like early warning systems. And so that's a really important context. So I'd love to share a couple ways that Women's World Banking is actively working on women's climate resilience.
I don't know if it's
One
just
way
me, but there
is
is
through
an echo here, so maybe the production team can fix it. And if you don't mind, Sonia, I'm just going to have Carl come in from the room while we're fixing the technology, because you have a lot of experience, particularly also when it comes to savings, right? This is like one of the areas that CARE works quite
Right,
intensively
yeah,
on.
thanks, Carmen. In fact, because CARE is a dual mandate agency that does a lot of humanitarian assistance work as well as development work, we're able to see the spectrum of challenges and solutions, and to kind of frame it based on Opheli's helpful introduction. The kind of definitional approach that we take is around the capacities to anticipate a climate shock, capacities to absorb the impact of that shock, capacities to adapt in the short, medium, and longer term, and capacities to transform. So it's that transformational piece that we're aiming at, and savings groups offer a huge opportunity to enable women to move from anticipation, absorption of a shock, and then onward to transformation.
And would you be able to agree with Ophélie on the statement that women do that better than men? What does your experience show? Or are we too black and white?
Idealistic or optimistic on that? Our data says that there's a lot of very, very positive impacts when you have mixed gender savings groups.
Okay.
It's not consistent. When you have women-only savings groups, there are some very, very positive outcomes in terms of solidarity, safe space, ability to save, to lend, to look after each other, to use their savings as a safety net in the event of a crisis. But when you have mixed gender groups, there's more progress possible in terms of social norm shifting and working with men to be able to dismantle some of the harmful social norms that would be holding women back.
What does your experience in India and South Asia, how does that compare to what Carl just said? Soumya, let me invite you here.
So when we look at resilience, right? I mean, we are impact investors. We invest equity and credit into, entrepreneurs or businesses that want to scale. One of the experiences around resilience in women in leadership and how they are able to transform and contribute to the economic and social aspects, right? So we invested through our Global Supply Chain Support Fund. We invested in INI Farms, that is one of the largest exporters of banana and pomegranate, led by a woman co-founder. So she, in agri especially, it's very patriarchal in India, right? So while women do a lot of labor work, when it comes to negotiating on the prices for a produce, it's always done between men. So they're never part of that economic, dialogue that happens, right? So she understood those challenges, and agri processing also, it's primarily male driven because of the fact that, it has to adhere to a lot of food and safety norms. So you can't wear, say in India, if you can't wear a bindi or, you can't wear your chains, bangles maybe. So all that need to be removed, and culturally that was considered very negative if you ask a woman to remove all her, earrings and all of that. So she over a period of time was able to work with the women and, tell them that, okay, this is giving you additional livelihood, right? So over a period of time, the change happened that she brought in more women into the agri-processing space and therefore create sustainable livelihoods for them, savings for them. She also sort of made sure that the procurement, when it happens from a woman farmer, a higher price is paid, right? So all those changes were brought in because she thought about it. Unlike, not just considering it as a business.
So you're saying that women's leadership again matters in terms of getting women even into the employment, into the savings piece. That's a very, very
Yeah, and
interesting thought,
like we spoke about, it's about building those capacities, adaptive capacities, absorptive capacities. You need to also think about transformative capacities, right? So how can we use, say, an adversity can be used as a catalyst for bringing that long-term change, whether changing the norms or changing the leadership style, all of that. So very, very important when you talk about resilience.
excellent. Sonia, I hope we have fixed our technology. Are you back in? Yes? Can we try?
I'm back.
What
In
is
full
your reaction?
disclosure, I'm at
I've
an
heard a little bit
airport.
about, women play a huge role in making sure that they are resilient, that they provide resilient livelihoods for their communities. You have heard the feedback from Carl on sometimes it's even better to have it mixed. You must have a lot of experience there.
Yeah, I really liked Carl's point about the fact that we're not just talking about women when we're talking about women. Actually, in the last 7 years, Women's World Banking has reached 91 million women. And while reaching 91 million women, we've also reached 53 million men. And so we're not just talking about products and solutions that are for women alone. Carmen, is it okay if I get into like a couple very specific examples of ways we've worked with financial institutions and others to solve for climate resilience?
You don't have to ask for permission. Go for it, please. Yes. Go.
Great. So one example is in India, actually, sticking to the topic of India here. Women's World Banking partnered with Bank of Baroda, which is a public sector bank in India, to pioneer bundled financial solutions that combined credit and savings and climate insurance. And this was actually to women who have very basic accounts. Well, we found that if women were saving a little bit on the account, Bank of Baroda was much more likely to be able to say, okay, well, we'll then provide credit and we'll couple climate insurance here. These products protected women entrepreneurs who are working in agriculture, textiles, and energy sectors from shocks like heat stress or livestock loss. We also combine this with, sorry for the background noise, portfolio guarantees and risk sharing mechanisms. So that's an example of like a really interesting and simple way to use existing products that are in the market to create women's climate resilience. I have a couple other that I can pepper throughout our conversation, but I'll just start with that one.
Well, that's a very good one. In the room, are most of you with financial institutions? Who has climate resilient products specifically targeted at women? Not yet. That's also going to change by next year when we have this panel again. Carl, are you doing anything specifically at CARE to promote women's resilience?
Absolutely, and I mean, this is my first, I have an admission to make, it's my first event on financial inclusion and inclusive finance. It's a fascinating learning opportunity and experience for me, so thanks again for the invitation. My area of, let's say, interest and specialization is climate change and climate resilience, but over, I suppose, 15, 20 years of a focus on community-based and locally led adaptation, we have learned that the savings groups that we have are able to deliver kind of significant returns, and that's 30 million members of about just under 500,000 savings groups across 67 countries. So it's not insignificant. and they have managed to save in the region of $10.5 billion since we started doing this about 35 years ago. And last year alone, it was 1.5 billion. So it's not insignificant, the capacity of savings groups, small groups of women who are saving and lending together to build up resilience against multiple shocks, because this is not just about climate change and climate shocks. There are covariate risks. They're hit by different shocks and stresses at different times. One thing that I think, has been a great learning for CARE is that our adaptation work, where we want to understand specific climate risks in specific places and capacities to adapt, we've learned that there are certain times of the year and certain times of seasons where women are at higher risk for obvious reasons. Climate change is changing that seasonality, because it doesn't rain when it used to rain, or the rains are shorter or longer or later. Cropping systems are changing. Understanding those risks and the capacities of women to adapt to those risks, and then overlaying the capacity of them to save and lend at certain times of the year, offers a great safety net, an opportunity to build resilience, and to graduate then.
Which I suppose what you're saying is that we need to still do a little bit more research on how climate is changing the realities on the ground,
Right.
and what kind of services are needed at what time of the year, at what conditions. So research is a big one.
And scenario planning, that's one of
Scenario planning, okay.
Because this vulnerability and capacity analysis, as we call it, it's with communities, it's ethnographic. We're working with women and men to listen to what they have to say about the risks that they feel, the dangers that they are sensing, helping them to anticipate by drawing in Met Office data, and actually getting Met Office officials into villages, or at least district level, to work with communities to interpret what the science is saying about the changing climate, and what they're feeling and sensing and seeing, the trends that they're observing, and actually listening to traditional and indigenous forecasting as well, because that's important. And we should forget that indigenous forecasting is socially and culturally important in a lot of places. So if you're able to build up the capacity of communities to retain confidence in indigenous forecasting, but bring science into it as well, the Met Office data, and helps them to build scenarios and so that they're able to make decisions without.
And I'm
without
sure it's
regrets.
to no surprise that digital access is therefore also extremely important, because we looked at the migration piece on it, right? The people that are displaced, so you need to have access to digital technologies. So I heard some financial solutions, some non-financial products that need to be coming out. Sonia started introducing us to bundling products. Before I turn it to Ophélie of her research and her team's research, and what kind of solutions are already out there in terms of products. Maybe I turn it to you, Soumya.
Yeah.
What is it that you guys are all doing?
So we are, as investors, we do a couple of things, right? So first we try to understand, of course, gender has always been implicitly part of our analysis. Now today with the 2X framework coming in, we try to understand how gender plays a role, say, across leadership, across, founders, across, employment, as well as the products and services offered by companies. I think one of the things which is very important is to understand culture, right? Gender itself is extremely, I wouldn't say complicated, but it's not top priority for the entrepreneurs, especially when they're looking at, scaling their business. What are the things that they need to, prioritize? Always gender becomes like not the top priority for them. So how do you make that relevant, right? So that's the constant discussion we keep having with SMEs. And I think somewhere the evidence around, how having more women in your organization at a leadership level, how that positively sort of creates value is still missing. I think something that all of us need to focus on. We've seen like evidences, but we haven't seen a sort of a collective sort of evidence that showcases that, okay, this is leading to a positive impact. It is, say, lowering cost or, increasing productivity. So how do you like quantitatively show it, right? So that's always a struggle. And with businesses specifically, that when we talk about gender and they need to adopt it, it becomes like a wider challenge. So those are the kind of conversations. And Carl spoke about climate, having that scenario mapping, and that's a different level of conversation. So I think somewhere the frameworks, everything need to speak to each other. You can't have a climate framework and then a gender framework that's not talking to each other. Then it becomes even more difficult, right? How do you implement it as investors? And especially, of course, we focus on returns. We have a fiduciary responsibility. And we also take a ecosystem-based approach. Right? So how do you build capacity of the entrepreneur to better adapt so that he can scale his business while returning our money as well? So there are multiple things. It's not very easy. It's extremely complicated, and people don't understand most of the context or most of the frameworks or why it's even important, because everybody's focused on now rather than focusing on how they would be impacted if they don't start working on it right now.
No, and you introduced 2X in the conversation, which is, of course, the leading global gender lens investing standard, which then allows you to actually measure what's happening at the SME level.
Yeah.
And then that allows you to then have some indications on what needs to happen at the financial institutional level. And then we can talk about how that can all help on the climate forecasting level. I think, Ophélie, we're getting into your substance very, very quickly. Would you like to just come in with some products? And then I want to come back to Sonia in order to give us some more promising approaches that she already was ready to share earlier. But maybe, Ophélie, tell us about some of the research that you have found and what kind of approaches actually could work in terms of products.
Yeah, so, sure. So within the report, and again, yes, I have to say, I didn't write the report. It was a team of multiple stakeholders writing the report and also peer reviewing the report. So I also want to say thank you to EIB, Women's Rights Banking, also CGAP, that ILO as well, that contributed to this report. And and some of this was already mentioned, right? But a way to strengthen resilience when we think about financial products, something we've seen is that you don't necessarily have to think of new financial products, completely innovative, something that doesn't exist. Most of the products are existing or in financial systems across markets, across geography. It's mostly about the delivery. And it was touched upon. How quickly can you access it? Do you need asset ownership? Do you need a smartphone, or can you use a basic mobile phone? So all of those aspects are not directly focusing on the products are important. The delivery and how easily accessible it is to women, especially under pressure. And so we have a list of 10 products. We could have selected way more, but we had 10. There is parametric insurance. The type of insurers are triggered with when you have specific measurable events. There is a nice example actually from Women's Rights Banking portfolio company, Pula, in Kenya. So maybe Sonia, you'll be able to talk more about this one. It was a really nice one. Also, working capital loans. This is something that's very common, but what's important is how flexible repayment is. You can also think about savings links to macro insurance. What's something important is to have products that are bundled to products that are already used by women, so that there is nothing extremely new to learn from. You can think about green loans, digital credit lines that are very linked to, or pay-as-you-go type of products that are linked to specific equipments that are climate smart equipments for women. So those type of products needs to be, should be part of our existing, first of all. And I've seen that some of the commercial banks here, microfinance institutions in the room don't have those products yet. I am happy to share with you that we've been partnering with EIB and ILO. Hopefully, we will have a program mid 2026. It would be a TA, €5 million program that will support EIB clients mostly, but also prospect in designing and actually implementing products for women's resilience. So hopefully we can share more with you in the coming months. Something very important that was also said in terms of solutions is the non-financial products, because it's never just about financial products, either savings, insurance, or else. And in the report, we mentioned two types of TA at two levels. You have the TA that is at the financial institution level, a TA that will enable commercial banks, microfinancial institutions, fintechs in really embedded risk, climate risk in their risk processes, in their business activity. Also, improving gender disaggregated data at their level is also very important, and training staff. There is never enough training to staff to better serve women. And
Thanks.
then you will also have technical assistance at the woman entrepreneur level. And for this, CARE is here, Women World Banking, and also others to mention some of the TA that you can provide to women in terms of financial literacy, digital skills, leadership is also extremely important. Confidence, especially in times of shocks, there is a need to have this confidence to move forward. And lastly, and that's something I didn't talk about, it's indicators and measurements. They are extremely important, especially for resilience, because when we talk about resilience, it's not, you can't just measure the product uptake. You have to measure how efficient the product is, how easy it is to access it in time of stress. And so in this report, for every M&E fans, there is 25 pages of 60 indicators in all phases: anticipation, absorption, adaptation, where there is both data that indicator that we're going to show that are focusing on the product uptake, but also that indicator that we focus on the efficiency of the products, and which means that those indicators will be tracked both from administrative data, insurance claims, digital transaction histories, or loan reports, loan files, but you're also going to have indicators that are tracked by direct engagement with the client, interviews and survey to really assess how effective a product was in bouncing back from a shock or adapting to future vulnerabilities.
Ophélie, I love the passion, and there's a lot of MNE huge fans in the room here. They will all want to have the report. We're going to make sure that you have the QR code to it later, and there's also some hard copies at the EIB stand that you can then also find. So go find the EIB stand later on. I want to turn it to Sonia. So because what Ophélie has mentioned, for those of you who do not yet have climate resilient products targeting women, let me just summarize. So we have risk protection and insurance products that can be made better targeted for women. We have the flexible and inclusive credit. We have green and productive finance that Ophélie mentioned, and emergency savings and liquidity accounts that actually allow women and their communities to cope better. Sonia, you promised us that you have some more hands-on examples on how Women's World Banking actually puts some of these products into action and how they make a difference, because as Ophélie said, you need to be able to measure the impact, and I'm sure you have done some of that already.
Yeah, and I'm so glad Ophélie brought up Pula, so I'll talk about that. But let me just acknowledge as well something that Sumia indicated, which is that capital is so important at this moment. I think we're in a disequilibrium where the financial products we have are not meeting the resilience needs of women. And anytime there's a disequilibrium, there's a need for capital, there's a need for innovation. So that's where Women's World Banking has come in with our investment funds. We have two funds under management, but I know that's where a lot of others are working as well. 2X was mentioned, and probably many of you in the room are working on this investing piece. Let me tell you about Pula. Pula means rain, raindrop in an African language. And Pula couples insurance with adaptation finance. So we know that emerging climate risks create new challenges for insurers and lenders, and Pula's agriculture insurance and agriculture input subsidies protect both loan books and farmers. This is a really important point when it comes to M&E, for example, too. Like, we're not just talking about women's resilience, we're also talking about the sustainability of institutions to be able to continue to provide these products. So Kenya, for example, subsidized insurance through Pula led to a 30% reduction in farmers' income volatility due to weather-related risks. In Ghana, Pula's subsidized insurance increased farmers' use of improved seeds and fertilizers by 40% and did so sustainably for the financial institution. Now, Pula is a really interesting example because they've been innovating in the market and they have found that actually sometimes like individual insurance doesn't necessarily work. And therefore, sometimes community level insurance or partnering with governments is the best way to create a commercial model. I think that's something that the rest of the panel could comment on too, is like, what are different models that would actually work?
Amazing, and I'm going to hold up here the report from Women's World Banking, November 4. Have a look, second edition, really useful examples as well. Can I turn it back to the room maybe here? I'll start with you, Soumya. The sectors, are we agnostic to sector lending, agri, health, water, care, education? Is there a particular priority sector that we should focus on, Carl? Any opinions on being sector agnostic in terms of our financial tools?
I think it's important to be sector agnostic because each of the sectors, whether you look at agri, whether you look at so climate and gender sort of are cross-sectorial, right? So whether you look at agri, which employs the largest number of people, say in an emerging market, 80% are smallholder farmers. So you need to have customized financial products that have both gender as well as climate in it. When you look at water sanitation, or if you look at health, all of these are critical, right? These are called as essential services. So how do you create products that sort of, have a component of both gender as well as climate? Things are changing. So how do you make a cohesive product, that captures both aspects, right? So in terms of sectoral focus for me, I think all are critical because it's not just one versus or over the other. Even if you look at regionally, contextually, culturally, all sectors become very, very critical, right? So for me, it's very important to stay sector agnostic and create those common frameworks.
I agree fully, completely. I think sector agnostic is we have to focus on what the needs are,
Yeah.
and where the bias is, and where the discrimination is, where the exclusion is. Bottom line, no matter what the sector interests are, and that's why the analysis is so important. Context matters, and things change, and that might be formal financial products might and do address some of those risks and needs and biases, but informal savings can also deliver. I wouldn't underestimate the informality.
I'm going to turn it to the audience. Warning. Are we missing something from our conversation? Are we too optimistic by just saying that, let's do gender and climate together, we solve everybody's problems? What are we missing? What topic have we not raised? There's a gentleman with the hands up. That's exactly wonderful. Thank you. There's a microphone coming your way so that also the people online can hear you.
Thank you very much. This is Ranjit Das from Bangladesh.
From Bangladesh, good.
Yeah, and we are also the Microphone Institute. And involvement of the women in the banking sector, the way you are talking, so I appreciate that. But you know that if you don't give the extra facility about there for the women, it's very tough to give them enrollment, because why the women are not in the bank or in the other financial sector? Because we have to think about the cultural barrier, we have to think about the male-dominated things, and also we have to think about the family-dominated things, and also the society. So these are the things that we have to consider. So if banking sector, they don't specially focus the women, that the priority, let's say that we have some women entrepreneur, and recently I talked to some of our ME entrepreneurs, especially men and women, both of them, and what the men are saying that they are willingly involving their women to the banking sector because they know that they will get the reduction of the interest over there. So it means if we don't give them such kind of facilities, that why the women will go there. So I found that the men, especially husband, even the brothers and fathers, they are also trying to involve the women because there are some facilities. So I must say that if you don't give some kind of facilities, it's very tough to increase the number of the women.
Thank you for that intervention. So we definitely haven't talked about culture, tradition, norms, and incentives to actually make it happen. Anybody else? What else is missing in the conversation? Another gentleman in the back. I'm glad that you're participating. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Craig Churchill from the International Labor Organization. And it's been a great panel, really interesting conversations. Two things I wanted to add. One is, when there is say, climate crisis, the financial institutions also need excess liquidity. So they need a way of being able to lend, because people may not have the ability to repay their loans. So thinking about refinancing, rescheduling loans, policies, and liquidity management is another piece. And then the other one to add, and it really depends on the country, of course, is links to social protection. We shouldn't put all of the burden onto low-income women, small businesses, to be able to manage their own risks completely. And what pieces are in place from governments to be able to create some sort of safety net that then you can build upon. Thank you.
Very important. National support, government support, regional support, and how do we actually support these institutions? Carl is dying to respond.
May I?
Hold one second. I want to just make sure that we don't forget anybody online. Laura, anything online? People online, you're also invited to participate. Turning it to Carl, who's dying to respond.
Thank you. I just have to, because it might be the first time that I've been in a conversation on a panel talking about gender where the first two interventions have come from men, which is really encouraging. We need more men to be talking about the challenges around gender inequality. It's absolutely imperative. So the point from the gentleman in Bangladesh, you're absolutely right. There are dynamics here that we need to grapple with. Yeah. The easier things are perhaps around agency and training and capacity and product and services, or even structural change, right? Policy change or institutions, legal as well as financial. The difficult thing is relational, is shifting social norms that are creating barriers for women, and that implies the engagement and leadership of men to be able to switch. And the social protection point, completely agree with that. I mean, that's fundamental and imperative. It's much easier for any state to put money into a bank account for pensions, for child benefit, for maternity benefit, for disability benefit, if the system is able to do that.
I wonder whether our online panelists are also dying to have a response. Sonia, I see you smile. Culture, how do we address culture? I'm sure you have some ideas. And also the whole national support, government support, social protection. How do these come together?
Yeah, I think culture is so important. That's why we often encourage financial institutions to take a women-centered design approach to their products. The other thing I wanted to point out, though, is that he mentioned the challenge of women being thin file customers. Like there not being a lot of data on which to make a lending decision. This is another thing we haven't talked about where climate is a business opportunity. So Women's World Banking worked with Kaleidofin, which is a credit scoring company, to use publicly available micro-level climate data, use AI tools, and then integrate that climate data into their credit score. It increased the accuracy of their credit score. It decreased the number of thin file customers they had, and it did so without having to pull in new personal information about the customers. It was just publicly available based on where people lived. That's one thing I wanted to share. The other thing is the comment on, like, we shouldn't make women responsible for their the resilience of their communities. And I do think that, you know, letting men off the hook isn't the right answer. But this makes me think about the conversations happening at COP30, for example, right now, where there's a lot of discussion about whether vulnerable people and vulnerable countries should be responsible for climate mitigation, given that it was all of our problem, and in fact, higher income countries contributed more to the climate crisis. I shared with a colleague of mine who works in impact investing, or the head of our impact investing team internationally. I shared with her I said, like, well, I don't know if we should make women responsible for climate resilience, responsible for climate challenges. And she said to me, how dare you leave women out of the opportunity here? Like, there is money that's flowing into the climate space. We need solutions that specifically target women so that they can build businesses, so that they can actually profit from this, so that they can be the innovators, so that they can be the leaders of companies themselves. And I think that's a really important point to keep in mind here, that again, like, women are not passive recipients of climate change and victims. Women are the innovators, they are the solution.
That was a lovely response. Did that sit well with you as a response? Yeah, very good. Yeah. How are you feeling? Good. Answered. Good. Anything to add from you, Ophelie, on the intervention that we have had?
Not much has been said, but it's very relevant interventions. Very relevant, yeah.
No, I think it was really good, and I loved the fact that we had, and actually, if you look at the room, we actually have quite a few men in the room, which I think is incredible. I often am sitting in rooms full of women only, and then there's one man. Can I invite you, Soumya, for some additional feedback on what you have heard?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say, actually, you know, we've covered almost all the points here. No additional feedback, but culturally, you know, it's very important to look at where women stand in the whole hierarchy, social hierarchy, and then design products, right? So we keep talking about, you know, flexible capital, we keep talking about, you know, customized solutions, but I don't know if, I mean, one of the things is I don't know what kind of outcomes they're actually bringing in, right? It's happening like in a very dispersed manner, but I don't know if there are strict evidences on it creating like a impact, like a transformative impact. So I think our next discussion, maybe next year, should be on whether, you know, all of these solutions we are talking about has actually resulted in, you know, a concrete sort of outcome, right? That would be interesting.
We have a couple of minutes left, and we are not here at a regular panel situation, right? It's not like I want this panel to happen, then we close, we all go home and forget about it. I want to use this opportunity. You're part of a larger European Microfinance Week network. So I hope that you are that inspired a little bit by what everybody has been doing. And I hope that we can possibly discuss some solutions, not just after this panel, but, you know, throughout the next weeks and months. Maybe we can actually really create some action that we move forward. And I'm looking at Laura and the staff there. Maybe you can help facilitate it for us. But maybe before we even go there, can I invite my panelists just to say what would make work better? Like, what do you think would help you, what is missing that would make your work more impactful and take it to the next level? I guess that's how I would best phrase the question. Is there anything that you need that you think might be here in the room? So if you had a magic wand, what would it be that you could actually benefit from? And what would you think would move the needle? Can I start with you? You're ready to go. You're dying to go.
So I've been working in the sustainability space for about 19 years now, right? And every time, there are frameworks, standards that are set. ESG is very confusing. It has social aspect in it. It has gender component in it. Then we have a gender framework. Then we also have a climate framework. ESG technically should look at climate as well, but we also have a climate framework. So I think somewhere in this whole creation of framework and standard, I think we are losing the point of impact, right? And how it's benefiting, say, SMEs. Why are we, imposing frameworks on them? Do we understand that? So I think somewhere we need to sort of create a comprehensive dialogue, comprehensive, sort of standard around this. I think that would make us as our lives as impact investors much easier, because then we know exactly what to communicate to the SMEs we are supporting across emerging economies, and we can also, sort of see what kind of value this is creating for the business. I think somewhere the conversation needs to sort of be channeled.
Which you would need indicators, data,
Yeah.
analysis, etc. Heard you, so you people in the room that can provide that, you meet up with Sonia later. Carl.
Yeah, thanks. Our work, our savings group portfolio is, I mentioned it earlier, it's applicable in emergencies and crisis scenarios, so village savings in emergencies where we're able to help the safety net in a critical incident where there's a rapid onset climate event or conflict or other shock. And we've been working for decades on the sort of longer term confidence building, empowerment, lots of social impact and economic impact. We have some data. It tries to ladder up where possible to the SDGs, right? We have the SDGs for a reason. And I just pull out a couple very quickly.
You're offering solution, or you're putting out what you need?
I'm getting to what I need, what we need.
Okay, good.
Because the impacts that we've found are social, very strong on social and economic. The next frontier for care, I think, is the ecological impact and the returns that we can get by supporting women in fragile ecosystems to be able to protect, restore, manage those ecosystems while building businesses, like to Sonia's point about micro and small enterprise in the circular economy, in the bioeconomy, in energy, clean energy. There's huge opportunity there, and that for me is the kind of the next frontier, the last frontier. If we're able to solve the social, economic, we didn't talk about gender-based violence, and the fact that we have data to say that if you're working carefully with women and men in a savings group, you're able to deliver significant returns in terms of reduction and prevention of gender-based violence. So there's lots of potential to do more of that as well.
Sorry, I have an example of this whole gender-based violence from our own experience, if I could share, if that's okay.
I don't have to ask for my permission. Please go ahead very
Okay,
quickly,
so
because I want to just make sure that we're also getting to our
Sure.
online.
So one of the things that when we were starting out our journey, on gender diversity, right? So we formed a working group and we looked at all our companies and we said, okay, microfinance has like I said, 99% of women borrowers, but the field staff that's there, it's all men. men go out and, they socialize the concept of microfinance, and they work with women, and they also, disperse payments and collect payments. So we were wondering, how can we increase? So if we have about 10,000 employees, around 70% are male employees, right? So how do we increase gender ratio at the field level? And also because it's very difficult, right, for women to go at the field level, travel to remote areas, talk about the loan products and all that. So we said we need to set a target for a company, and we said, okay, we need to increase the gender ratio in the field staff. We, created an all-women branch as well as, a sort of a mixed branch. While we were doing this, over a period of time, we realized that the, sexual harassment cases had started increasing without our knowledge. So, while the intention was good in terms of let's bring in more diversity at the field level, what we didn't anticipate is, the gender violence or the posh cases have increased. So how do we sort of balance that out? That was a very interesting, thing. Sometimes we offer solutions, we don't know what is the likely negative impact of that. So,
And not to delve on it, but it may have also been a good thing, because now finally it gets reported. Maybe it wasn't reported before. But Sonia, bring it back to you, because we need to also come back, unfortunately, to close very, very soon. Correct, Laura? Yes, I'm getting the thumbs up. Sonia, over to you. What's the magic wand? What makes your work better? What would it take to move the needle with anybody's help in the room?
Yeah, what we need is partnerships, very simply. I mean, the most innovative solutions are the ones that have a multi-stakeholder effort behind them. Right now, I think we have all of the ingredients we need to solve climate resilience challenges. We just haven't put the pieces together in the right way. And so it requires governments, it requires private sector, it requires supporting organizations. And that's what women's role banking is really seeking right now, is partnerships.
No, thank you so much, and I think that's something that we would agree with. I wanted to introduce you to my colleague, Denitsa Berkov. Can you raise your hand? She is also the person that has been looking at this topic at EIB, and please talk to her for any more questions. She's also the person who helped us launch earlier this summer in Seville our Women for Stronger Communities and Growth initiative. That's an initiative that Ophélie mentioned with ILO and the Gates Foundation. So the partnership piece, very, very important to EIB as well, to all of us. Also CGAP is in it from the World Bank group. And so let's continue doing more and rolling out more so we find the solutions and can scale them up very quickly. Ophélie, you almost have the last word. If I could ask the production team to give me the next slide again.
you have to, I think, press.
I need to slide back before I can click it, I think. Yeah. Yep. I'm leaving you with this slide. This comes straight out of the report. That is the report that Ophélie and her team have produced. But Ophélie, we can hear you. Any closing remarks on how it would make your work better by reaching out to anybody in the audience here in terms of partnerships?
I think all answers were great. I could tell by all those answers. Data, clearly the first one. You can't measure, you can't know if you don't have data to start from. And partnerships. And those two aspects are really clearly mentioned in the report. Partnership, because as the Commission, we are a donor in this development ecosystem. We are not the one, providing the TA to the entrepreneurs or to the financial institutions, but we are the one, providing the money or strategy, let's say, and there is a need really to work all together. And that's why I'm very glad that we've been able to create this, the beginning of this partnership with EIB and ILO, and looking forward to expand the partnership to also financial institutions that provide financial tools to women entrepreneurs. And really to keep women at the center of our discussions is also extremely important. We can't forget why we are actually hearing this today.
This is a wonderful last sentence, and don't forget about the financial opportunity that women's market represents. Yes. Please join me in thanking everybody. I had a fantastic, stellar panel. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for the participation in the room. And I have one more slide to show you, which is the report, so you can all download it with a QR code. And here I am moving it. Thank you so much. Thank you.